At 4:20 a.m., while American cities lay quiet under streetlights and fog, federal teams moved at the exact second across multiple states, breaking into apartments, offices, and coastal estates that had looked harmless only hours earlier. ICE, the FBI, HSI, the DEA, and armed federal units pulled suspects into the open and seized fentanyl, synthetic drugs, cash, and weapons in a strike that unfolded without sirens and without warning. This was not a random bust or a routine sweep, because the timing, the targets, and the coordination pointed to a system that had been mapped in silence and hit all at once. What follows does not reveal everything at the door, but advances step by step from a house to a hidden tunnel, from a tunnel to a broader network, and from that network to a national operation that reshaped the balance overnight. Subscribe to Military Power to follow this story, because what surfaced before dawn may only mark the opening move of a much larger battle. The Malibu coastline remained still as darkness pressed against the glass walls of the estate, and the silence around the property felt rehearsed, as if the place itself had been trained to look harmless. The convoy stopped well short of the gate, not just because of caution, but because every step from that point forward belonged to muscle memory built through raids where hesitation had created escape. Doors opened softly, boots met gravel without hurry, and rifles came up in controlled arcs as agents spread outward, sealing angles that ordinary residents never think about. From the outside, the estate appeared to be a luxury home, built for privacy and views, yet the team treated it as a hostile site, where every window and hedge could conceal movement. This was the first contradiction of the morning, as the public saw a house, while the federal teams saw a node in a criminal system that had learned to disguise itself in respectability. Movement toward the gate came without shouted commands, because the goal was dominance through timing rather than noise. A small group closed the distance with shields angled forward, while others held their positions along the perimeter, watching the garage, the rear access path, and the narrow trail leading down toward the coast. A drone hovered high enough to avoid detection, feeding heat signatures to a handheld screen that was passed from one agent to another without a word. Inside the fence line, security lights flickered as sensors detected motion, yet the response from the house never arrived in time. The gate gave way under controlled force, metal bending inward as the lock failed, and the sound that followed was brief and swallowed by the ocean air. Once the opening appeared, the team flowed through it in a single motion, not rushing, not stopping, but advancing with the patience of people who expected resistance and planned to remove it before it formed. The lawn became a grid of responsibility within seconds, as each agent claimed a slice of space and held it. One element moved along the main wall, scanning doors and windows, while another cut toward the pool area where reflections and glass could confuse a hurried search. Radio stayed quiet because eye contact and hand signals carried enough meaning at this distance. The garage door remained closed, but a vehicle outline appeared on the thermal feed, indicating that the exit route had already been considered and denied. Along the back edge of the property, two agents watched the slope toward the water, because wealth often came with boats, and boats came with plans to leave. Nothing moved, yet no one relaxed, since calm usually signaled preparation rather than innocence. Inside the house, the first door opened into an expansive living space, designed to impress visitors and distract attention. Art hung cleanly on the walls, furniture sat untouched, and the air smelled faintly of polished wood and citrus cleaner. The agents moved through without slowing because appearances were not the objective. Rooms were cleared one by one, with each doorway treated as a possible threat, until proven otherwise. Closets opened, bathrooms checked, and hallways held until the following position was secure. A security guard attempted to speak, then froze as hands guided him to the floor, where zip ties replaced questions. No one raised a voice, because the team understood that control came from speed and certainty, not volume. The contrast at the center of the operation became sharper as the target came into view. The homeowner was known publicly as a defense attorney with a polished reputation, a professional face that appeared on legal panels and charity boards. Inside the raid, that image held no weight, because the focus remained on what the property represented rather than who it entertained. Agents positioned themselves between the target and every possible path of retreat, shaping the room so that movement became limited and predictable. Instructions came calmly and were followed quickly, not solely because of fear, but because the situation rendered resistance pointless. The arrest itself lasted only moments, yet it carried the gravity of months of surveillance and preparation that had led to this exact spot on the floor. As the target was secured, the rest of the team tightened its hold on the property, shifting from entry to control. Windows were covered, exterior doors locked from the inside, and the perimeter was reinforced with overlapping fields of watch. Each agent knew that the most dangerous phase often came after the arrest, when unknown elements realized the operation was underway. Nothing happened, yet no one assumed safety, because this place had been selected for a reason that went beyond wealth or location. The estate had been treated as a command center from the beginning, and command centers rarely gave up their secrets easily. The search continued with measured intent, not as a frantic sweep, but as a deliberate examination of space. Drawers opened, cabinets inspected, and storage rooms checked with the same care given to more obvious areas. Floors were tested for irregular sounds, walls for unusual construction, and furniture for signs of concealment. Agents moved slowly, because haste would have missed what patience revealed. This was not curiosity, but discipline, built on the understanding that sophisticated criminal operations rarely left evidence in plain sight. As the operation settled into this controlled rhythm, the significance of the location became increasingly difficult to ignore. This was not a temporary hideout, or a rented space meant to be abandoned at the first sign of trouble. The scale of the property, the layered security, and the confidence embedded in its design suggested a sense of permanence and planning. The public image of legal success fit neatly over this structure, providing cover rather than contradiction. For the team, this reinforced the lesson that modern crime often relied less on fear and more on trust, blending into respected professions until it became invisible. At this point, the question extended beyond the walls of the house and into the minds of those watching from a distance. If a place like this could operate quietly, shielded by status and paperwork, then the idea of safety tied to appearances deserved reconsideration. This moment marked a shift in the operation, from simple enforcement to exposure, as the search hinted at something deeper, embedded within the property itself. Do you think modern crime is more dangerous when it hides behind clean paperwork and respected titles? With the perimeter locked and the surface of the house under control, attention turned away from doors and windows toward what might be concealed below, because the real structure of the operation was never meant to be visible at ground level. The descent into the underground space changed the pace of the operation, because movement slowed and every sound gained weight as agents stepped beyond the surface of the house. Boots met concrete that felt colder and harder than the rooms above, and light shifted from soft interior glow to the harsh white of tactical lamps. The first chamber opened wide enough to force a pause, not from shock, but from the need to understand what kind of space this was. Along the walls, stacks of sealed packages rose in careful rows, each one identical in size and shape, arranged with the calm order of a factory floor. Hands moved methodically, cutting seals, checking contents, and passing samples back without comment. Methamphetamine appeared first, dense and compact, followed by fentanyl powder so fine it clung to gloves and air alike. This was not a place where drugs were hidden and forgotten, but a space where material waited to be processed, counted, and moved on schedule. As the team advanced deeper, equipment replaced storage, and the function of the chamber became clearer with each step. Pill presses stood bolted to the floor, their surfaces clean, their controls worn smooth by repeated use. Mixing vats lined one side of the tunnel, stained lightly at the rims where chemical residue had dried and been wiped away repeatedly. Packaging tables filled the center, marked by measured lines and labeled containers, which allowed speed without confusion. Agents moved around these machines with care, because even inactive equipment carried risk, and the air itself hinted at the presence of chemicals. This was not improvisation, and it was not temporary. Every tool sat in its designated place, forming a complete production line that transformed raw materials into finished products, ready for distribution. The space functioned like a workshop designed for profit rather than survival. The scale of the setup necessitated a shift in posture, as it conveyed intent rather than desperation. Each press and vat suggested training, planning, and investment, the same traits found in legitimate industrial operations. Nothing here suggested panic or haste, and nothing indicated that this system was expected to shut down quickly. Agents documented each position through motion and sight, tracing the flow from one station to the next as if mapping a factory. The idea of a simple stash gave way to the recognition of an organized supply chain, built to run without interruption. In this place, drugs were not just stored. They were produced, refined, and prepared with discipline. The tunnel had become a business corridor, and every step forward confirmed that reality. Movement continued with tighter spacing as the tunnel narrowed, and the environment shifted again. The hum of machinery faded behind, replaced by a quieter stretch that demanded closer attention. Metal doors appeared set into the concrete walls, evenly spaced, each one reinforced and secured with heavy locks. Agents approached them with controlled caution because these doors were not designed to protect equipment. One by one, the doors opened, revealing narrow cells framed by bars and chains fixed deep into the concrete. The air inside carried the smell of bodies in confinement, a sharp contrast to the sterile workspaces behind. The bedding lay thin and worn, food wrappers were scattered across the floor, and makeshift containers hinted at prolonged use. These spaces had not been built for storage, and they had not been left unused. The presence of the cells altered the tone of the search, because the tunnel now showed a second purpose. These rooms held no machines, yet they carried more weight than the entire production line. Marks on the walls suggested counting days, while scuffed floors showed repeated movement in a limited space. Agents checked each cell with care, scanning for hidden occupants, then stepping back to allow others to confirm what they saw. This was not a detention area meant for short stays, but a holding system designed to keep people out of sight and under control. The structure of the cells was unlikely to escape, and their placement deep underground ensured silence above. In this space, control replaced transport, and fear replaced efficiency. Further along, the tunnel widened again and the environment grew colder and more severe. Drainage channels ran along the floor, sloping toward a central point where pipes disappeared into the concrete. The surfaces here showed signs of repeated cleaning, yet traces remained in corners and seams that water alone could not erase. Agents slowed their movement, scanning the area with deliberate precision, because this was a place where evidence did not want to be found. Swabs came out, lights shifted angles, and attention focused on the ground rather than the walls. Biological traces appeared under examination, faint but unmistakable, carrying a weight that no quantity of drugs could match. The space had been used to remove problems permanently. The structure of this area made its purpose clear without the need for explanation. Drainage systems had been designed to handle more than just water, and the construction was supported to withstand repeated use without collapse. The tunnel no longer represented commerce or confinement, but finality. Agents moved through with restraint, because each step confirmed that the operation had crossed beyond trafficking into systematic elimination. There was no chaos here, and no signs of struggle left behind, which suggested planning rather than impulse. Those who entered this part of the tunnel did not go by choice. The design removed witnesses as efficiently as it moved product. As the search continued, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Those held in the cells served a purpose until they no longer did, and once they became liabilities, this space resolved that problem with mechanical certainty. The tunnel functioned as a closed system where production, control, and disposal existed side by side, each supporting the other. Agents documented what they found through action rather than reaction, because the scale demanded clarity over emotion. Every mark on the floor and every pipe in the wall reinforced the same conclusion. This was not a crime driven by chaos, but a crime built on process. The recognition of that process carried implications beyond the tunnel itself. The operation had moved past selling drugs into managing risk through removal, treating people as variables to be controlled or erased. Nothing here suggested hesitation or fear of discovery, only confidence in the system and trust in its concealment. The underground environment supported long-term use, which meant the operation was expected to endure. Agents adjusted their movements accordingly, knowing that each discovery pointed to a broader structure that could not be understood in isolation. This tunnel was not an end, but a piece of a larger design. As the team reached the far edge of this section, the sense of containment gave way to a sense of direction. The layout suggested flow outward rather than inward, with subtle changes in slope and construction guiding movement toward another exit. Attention shifted from what had been found to where it led, because systems like this rarely existed without connection. The tunnel had already revealed its role in production, confinement, and elimination, yet its orientation hinted at something beyond the underground chambers. With evidence secured and the path ahead defined, the operation prepared to follow the tunnel toward the surface once more, where the next phase would expose how this hidden system linked directly into the wider world above. The tunnel did not end in darkness or collapse, but rose gently toward a reinforced exit that opened beneath a warehouse floor near the Port of Los Angeles. Agents advanced with steady spacing, their hands brushing the concrete walls as the air shifted from the damp underground cold to the dry smell of dust and fuel. When the final panel was lifted, light spilled down from above, revealing a vast space where forklifts usually moved and trucks waited for loading. The warehouse looked ordinary from the outside, yet from this angle it felt like the mouth of a machine built to swallow cargo and send it forward without leaving a trace. This was the other side of the operation, where the tunnel connected directly to global trade. Inside the warehouse, movement replaced silence. Teams spread across the concrete floor, checking corners, offices, and storage bays that had been arranged to look inactive. Shipping containers sat in clean rows, each marked with labels tied to a registered import-export company that appeared legitimate on paper. Doors were opened with care, seals inspected, and interior spaces scanned for hidden compartments. This was not chaos, but controlled motion, because the warehouse had been designed to move goods quickly, not hide them for long. Every pallet space and loading lane was designed to maximize efficiency, demonstrating how product flowed seamlessly from ship to tunnel to street without delay. The connection between port and property became clear through action rather than explanation. Cranes outside lifted containers while agents inside traced the path those containers would have taken once cleared. The warehouse served as a hinge between worlds, linking open docks to private neighborhoods through concrete and steel. Nothing here suggested fear of inspection, only confidence in routine and paperwork. The tunnel beneath the floor transformed this space from a simple transit point into a protected artery, allowing drugs to bypass surface risks entirely. This design showed how deeply the operation understood the systems it exploited. While the warehouse came under control, another layer of the operation surfaced through quiet signals in an adjacent room. Monitoring equipment hummed as specialists listened, not for noise in the building, but for voices captured earlier through hidden lines. The content of those calls carried no urgency, no raised tones, only measured discussion. Expansion plans unfolded through calm exchanges, numbers mentioned as if reviewing inventory. Decisions about removing witnesses came with the same tone, framed as necessary adjustments rather than acts of violence. The absence of emotion made the words heavier, because killing was treated as a management task, not a moral line. Those recordings reshaped how the space was understood. The warehouse was not just a transfer point, but a nerve center where planning reached outward. Voices tied the attorney to cartel leaders without hesitation, linking legal authority to criminal command. The conversation suggested that trust was built over time, reinforced by results and shared profits. Agents documented the material through movement and coordination, sealing equipment and isolating data sources. This was not a discovery made in a rush, but a confirmation of what the tunnel had already implied. As the scale expanded, the operation shifted again, transitioning from a single site to a synchronized national response. Teams across the country acted with the same discipline seen in Malibu and the warehouse. Doors opened in offices, homes, and court buildings, each entry shaped by intelligence gathered over months. Respected figures were guided into custody with the same calm used on the coastline. No single arrest felt dramatic, yet together they formed a pattern that spread quickly across states. The structure that protected the network began to fracture under its own weight. Lawyers were taken first in some locations, judges in others, and prosecutors where access allowed. Each arrest followed a similar rhythm: a quiet approach, controlled entry, and firm restraint. Evidence moved alongside people, carried out in boxes and sealed bags that represented years of influence. Corruption revealed itself not through spectacle, but through repetition, as one position after another fell under scrutiny. The operation no longer focused on drugs alone, but on the system that allowed them to move freely. What emerged was not a single cartel brought down, but a legal framework that had been bent to serve crime. The arrests revealed how authority had been exploited as a cover, turning trust into a weapon. This was infiltration, not partnership, and it reached into places designed to protect the public. The tunnel, the warehouse, and the wiretaps all pointed toward the same conclusion: that the most dangerous element of the operation was its access to legitimacy. As the last arrests in this phase concluded, attention began to turn toward the consequences that would follow, because exposure was only the beginning of the fight that still lay ahead. The operation closed where it began, not with gunfire or chaos, but with a clearer picture of how modern crime truly works. What first appeared as a luxury estate on the Malibu coast revealed itself as more than a private residence, because beneath polished floors and ocean views stood a structure built for control, secrecy, and long-term profit. From that single house, a tunnel cut through layers of concrete and trust, linking private wealth to industrial-scale crime. That tunnel did not stand alone, because it connected outward to warehouses, ports, and legal offices, forming a national network that moved drugs, silenced witnesses, and protected itself behind respected names. Seen together, the pieces form a pattern that goes far beyond a single cartel or a single raid. One estate demonstrated how power can conceal itself behind money and reputation. One tunnel showed how logistics and infrastructure can be weaponized without drawing attention. A nationwide operation revealed how deeply these systems can infiltrate places meant to uphold the law. This was not a crime operating in the open, and it did not rely on constant violence in the streets. It relied on paperwork that passed inspections, titles that commanded respect, and institutions that people were taught to trust without question. The perspective that emerges from this case is unsettling but necessary. Modern crime no longer needs constant shootouts or visible turf wars to dominate territory. It can operate quietly, utilizing lawyers, warehouses, shipping lanes, and legal loopholes to achieve the same level of control with far less risk. Violence still exists, but it is hidden, managed, and applied only when someone becomes a liability. The danger lies not only in the drugs or the money, but in how easily criminal systems can blend into daily life and operate for years without detection. At the same time, the operation shows the other side of the balance. Federal coordination, patience, and precision can still expose these structures when pressure is applied at the right points. The arrest did not come from chance, but from understanding how the system worked and striking where it felt safest. That approach does not end crime overnight, but it does disrupt the illusion that power built on secrecy is untouchable. If you want to continue following stories like this, where hidden networks are brought into the light and the lines between crime and legitimacy are examined, subscribe to Military Power for more in-depth coverage of these unseen battles. And now the question remains open for you. In your view, do operations like this truly restore order, or do they only reveal a deeper system that has yet to be fully confronted?